And I think he'd probably be the first one to admit if he was going to do a rock and roll band, he'd want to go analog. I'm sure. I'm not so sure I agree with him about having the control, because I think ultimately, no matter what medium you're in, whether it's analog or digital, you have control. You're the person who's in control, not the medium. I'm not quite sure I agree with him there. Come on.
This is just a quick.
Flying pigeons in here. Sorry, ducks.
This is a quick question about performance. For me, most of the recordings I hear that are my favorites are live recordings, and it just seems like a lot of energy is lost in a lot of studio recordings. Maybe
Yes.
you could add something to that. And I don't know. We're not going to have a piano tomorrow, but that's one of the hardest instruments to record.
Not really.
And for a lot of people, it seems. I don't know.
Well, it depends. Are you classical piano recording, jazz, rock? Because I mean, in rock, it's easy.
Like straight ahead jazz and classical.
Straight ahead jazz, a little bit more difficult than straight ahead rock. With rock, there's a fairly simplistic kind of pattern that one can use, and I can show you how to do that. That's very simple. Jazz is a little bit more difficult because if you have a piano trio, how do you get separation between the bass, the drums, and the keyboard? And you want a nice piano sound. The lid has to be open, of course, or you're going to get spillage. If it's solo piano, I mean, there are many, many techniques that one can use. There's two close mics, there's a stereo mic, there's pairs, there's a million ways to go with it. There's mics on the lid, there's at least as many as I can think of, half a dozen ways that you can record a good jazz piano. It depends on what you're doing. If you give me more specifics, I could steer you in the direction of what mics to use and...
Just maybe like your favorite setup for like recording a jazz performance.
I don't really record jazz that much anymore, although I have done it and I know what to do with it and how to make it sound right. And would it be a solo jazz piano or would it be a piano trio?
Like a trio situation, maybe.
Trio, well, obviously separation is of primary importance, number one. And number two, the sonic qualities of the piano. If it's the featured, presumably the piano is the featured instrument. Lid open, probably a C24 for the general ambience, and I would experiment with some contact mics, maybe, or I would go with vintage mics like a pair of 67s, which might be interesting. But I would take probably a full afternoon of experimentation with different microphones to see what sounds the best, and try and angle the lid of the piano so that you minimize the spillage from the drums. I would go for a very open and airy sound, best described by distance makes depth. I hope I answered your question.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
How are ya?
I'm doing good.
Can I go home now?
Of course you can. We're having a party now. But anyways, I've been sitting here trying to figure out a question that I would want to ask you, but I really can't. And I just would like to say
anything.
I'd just like to say
as long as it's not about my personal life, I don't mind.
I'd just like to say that the work that you've done, for me at least, and I'm sure that everybody else can relate with this. I don't know. The way I think about recording is capturing a moment in time and an emotion that's happening in that moment. And
always have. By the way, just this very interesting thing you said there. That is so true. What you just said. Capturing that moment in time. For God's sakes, keep your fingers ready by that button. And if you're not by that button, if you have to run out in the studio to do something, leave a DAT running. It's cheap. Tape is cheap in comparison with capturing that moment. The guys may never get it again. They may be too stoned, or they may be arguing, or God knows what else. But capture that moment. So important. Sorry, go on.
Okay, and then another thing I would like to say is that you have given probably the greatest gift to the musicians that you've worked with by giving them the sense of immortality, something that people have been trying to reach for now. I mean, even though they've passed on, Jimmy in general, basically, even though he's passed on, because of you, he's going to be with us, and he's going to be there for our kids, and he's going to be there for theirs. And that's something that's just wrong.
I am honored that you said, thank you very much.
Totally. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
On that note, I'd like to encourage you to digress as much as possible. We only groaned because we had a speaker that we had to sit through for about 2 weeks. And like every 5 minutes he would say, "Oh, I digress. I digress." So
Well,
it was like a crutch.
All right.
Digress as much as possible.
But when I said that in a way that I appreciate. Thank you very much. I appreciate the sentiment, and I will digress. Ask me questions that are directed to that digression. If you want to know more about, Jimmy or or whoever, Stones, Beatles, Kiss. Well, you go to the mic. Go to the mic. Get in the line. Get in that line. Wait, he's before you though. Go behind him. Come on. You gotta be fair.
What would be some qualities that you would look for in a session player? What do you expect from
a session musician?
Yeah, from the really decent session players you've worked with.
Well, generally, most of the session players that I've had the fortune or misfortune to work with. No, I would say fortune generally. Let's take somebody like Anton Fig, for instance. The drummer on the Letterman show. I've done a lot of work with. He's a good friend as well, but he's the epitome of a great session player. He can read. He has great feel, fantastic chops, and more importantly, he gets into what the singer is singing about. He knows, he understands songs. He understands song structure. He's not playing from a drummer's perspective, which he could do with his eyes closed, but it's the fact that he thinks beyond the drumming. He thinks, how can I best serve the song and the songwriter, the performance? That's how he thinks. And that's what I mean, obviously I pick my session players really carefully, the guys who can integrate with the other players. I mean, if I get Anton, I'd probably get Will Lee, or if I didn't get Will Lee, I'd get somebody else who has played with Anton so that the bass player and the drummer can lock up. Most importantly, the bass drum and the bass guitar have to lock up, if that's the basic thing you were talking about, right? Yeah. I mean, that applies to all the session musicians. This gentleman here, come on.
Like, basically, what is a day in the life of you recording Jimi Hendrix?
Oh. There's a couple of answers, and I can illustrate them. There's a few things I'll tell you about, things that are coming up that I'm sure you'll all be interested in. First of all, just let me tell you that, or you know about the books, right? The two books I wrote, the Sessions and Setting the Record Straight. They're very key, I guess, Bibles of information. And I bow to my partner, John McDermott, who did all the research and stuff. He's a great writer, and I think that really gives you, if you read the two books one after the other, you get a pretty damn good idea of what it was like in the studio. We're also finishing up right now, and it'll be done in time for in October 19th, Madison Square Garden, New York City. There's a big Hendrix tribute concert, and we're hoping to show a movie that we just did called The Making of Electric Ladyland, which is me going through all the master tapes, track by track, so you can hear how that stuff is all put together. Yeah, it's just pretty neat. We found all the original multi-tracks, and then that's how how Jimmy and I did the stuff. And we interviewed Chaz, God bless him, before he died, about 5 weeks ago in England. And it was the first time Chaz and I had sat in the control room together in about 25 years, and we'd had a great time. And just to let you all know that there is stuff in the works right now. John and myself are in charge of the Hendrix library. We're going to reissue all the original albums in album form and in the original way that Jimmy wanted them when it comes to some of the later albums. And we're involved in that right now, so that's something. Yeah, make a nice Christmas present, wouldn't it?